Does it really take $2.3 million to be wealthy in 2025? And how does this differ across generations? Hello, member Super Savers and Bond Course fans. I hope you're healthy and well. And greetings once again from Taiwan this week. I hope you're enjoying the summer wherever you are. We'll be back in a few days' time, so you'll probably see our more familiar bookcase background in the next video. And for those of you who subscribe to Your Financial Journey, stay tuned for Caitlin's and Ava's multi-part series on the Taiwanese and Singaporean markets and economy. So, back to our own country for now. One of the topics that often comes up for us when we see close friends, colleagues, and family is, not surprisingly with our profession, money. And Charles Schwab has come up frequently over the past few days in these conversations as they released their new Modern Wealth Survey 2025 just last week. Schwab conducts their Modern Wealth Survey annually to give us an overview of what Americans believe it takes to be comfortable or even wealthy. So, with that in mind, here are the 3 topics that we'll be covering in today's video. 1. What does it take to be comfortable or even wealthy in the minds of most Americans? 2. How do the comfort and wealthy numbers change across generations? And 3. What's more important than money? As usual, here's our front of video disclaimer. For a detailed disclaimer, please refer to the end of this video. Let's dive in now, folks. What does it take to be comfortable or even wealthy in the minds of most Americans? Schwab conducted their Modern Wealth Survey in April and May of this year among 2,200 adults between the ages of 21 and 77 years old from all walks of life. And according to the survey, the average American believes that being comfortable starts with $839,000 and that it takes $2.3 million to be considered wealthy. And this $2.3 million number for 2025 is pretty much in line with the $2.2 million number from 2022 and 2023, and only slightly down from $2.5 million in 2024. What's interesting to note here is that the first time this wealthy number spiked north of the $2 million mark was in 2022. Now, this year's survey doesn't speak to the reasons why, but one might think, just from looking at this chart here alone, that a possible driver for why the threshold for being perceived as wealthy jumped above $2 million in 2022 may have been the fact that 2022 was also the year when many of us started feeling the post-COVID inflation hit home hard for the first time. And this hypothesis sounds even more plausible given that 73% of survey respondents say that inflation, cost of living, is a main driver for their perception that everyone may need more money to feel wealthy. And the proportion is even higher if we add the 48% down here that name just inflation as a key driver without the cost of living added. And it also seems to be the interpretation from some media outlets of Schwab's data here. According to this Fortune article, inflation and tariffs are the culprits for why Americans now think it takes an average of $2.3 million to be considered wealthy. But as our Diamond NestEgg regulars know, we generally like to dig a bit deeper into the details. And here's what we found. When we go back to Schwab's Modern Wealth Survey from 2022, when the what it takes to be wealthy number here crossed the $2.2 million mark. So when we go back to Schwab's Modern Wealth Survey from 2022, and we can see the years before as well, what we discover is that the $2.2 million from 2022 was not a post-COVID anomaly driven by inflation. Rather, it was the $1.9 million from 2021 that was the post-COVID anomaly. Who knows, perhaps because we were all locked down for so long and convinced that our lower spending would last forever. And if we look at the $2.4 million in 2018, the $2.3 million in 2019, and the $2.6 million in 2020 pre-pandemic, we can see that the $2.5 million in 2024 and the $2.3 million in 2025 are actually in line or even somewhat lower than they have been before the pandemic. So I suppose the silver lining from Schwab's Modern Wealth Survey for 2025 is that despite a somewhat turbulent market year so far and varying perceptions of where things may be headed in the foreseeable future, based on these findings, Americans' perception of what it means to be wealthy has not really changed much over the years, with the exception of the $1.9 million 2021 post-COVID anomaly here. It was $2.4 million in 2018. It peaked at $2.6 million in 2020 before the pandemic hit, fell south of $2 million for the first time in 2021 after the pandemic, and is only now, over the past few years, slowly inching its way back up close to pre-pandemic levels. In fact, based on these numbers, Americans feel they need less to be wealthy now than they did pre-pandemic. Of course, what it means to be wealthy can vary quite a bit depending on your age and stage of life, which brings us nicely to the next section of today's video. How do the comfort and wealthy numbers change across generations? Not surprisingly, it seems that the older people get, the higher the numbers are. So let's have a look at the answers by age. Gen Z, those ages 22 to 28 at the time of the survey, believe that they will need $329,000 to be financially comfortable and $1.7 million to be wealthy. Millennials, ages 29 to 44, have higher numbers. For millennials, it takes $847,000 to be financially comfortable and $2.1 million to be wealthy. Gen X, ages 45 to 60, have similar numbers to millennials. Gen X feel that $783,000 is financially comfortable and $2.1 million is wealthy. And boomers, ages 61 to 77, have the highest standards, it seems. For boomers, being financially comfortable requires $943,000, and being wealthy requires a whopping $2.8 million. Now, I don't know what you make of this difference by age group, but it seems to me that the older you get, the more you may have either stricter standards or a more realistic sense of how expensive life in this country can be, especially when you're close to or already in retirement and the regular paychecks from work stop coming. I know that for me, $1 million when I was 22 is not quite the same as $1 million now, many decades later, now that we have a mortgage and 4 kids who will be entering college in the next 5 years. Drop a comment below and let me and the community know, what do you think of these numbers, and do any of them surprise you? And while we're on the topic of how people may become either more demanding or more realistic as they progress in life, it seems that overall, the older generations are also less optimistic about either being wealthy already or at least being on track. While 43% of Gen Z and 42% of millennials, essentially the cohorts from ages 22 to 44, say that they are already wealthy or at least on track, this number drops to 33% for Gen X from ages 45 to 60, and it drops even more to only 20% for boomers from ages 61 to 77. And on the other end of the spectrum, 39% of Americans don't think they'll ever be wealthy in their lives. But back to the fact that the younger generations seem to be more optimistic about their financial future. Perhaps they really don't have any idea about what's going to hit them later on in life. Or perhaps some of it may have to do with knowing where you stand and planning for the future, as the study seems to suspect. As we can see here, among the 22 to 28-year-old Gen Zers, only 18% don't have a financial plan of any kind. Now, this number seems to go up with age, and among the 61 to 77-year-old boomers, a whopping 45% don't have a financial plan of any kind. I have to say, this surprised us. It's not what we would have expected based on our professional experience and the questions and comments we've seen on this channel. I would have expected that people would start to think about their financial goals and make a plan as they near retirement or get into it. Please drop a comment below and let me and the community know, was this what you would have expected? So, that was a snapshot of where Americans think financial comfort and wealth start. and whether they think they can get there. But as often in life, we need to look at the big picture and put things into the proper perspective. Even in this financially focused Schwab survey, it turns out that money is just one piece of the puzzle for feeling wealthy personally, and not even the most important one, which brings us neatly to the next section of today's video. What's more important than money? According to the Schwab survey, when asked what it means to be wealthy, Americans place equal value on happiness as they do on the amount of money they have. In fact, happiness is even ranked a tad bit higher at 45% than the amount of money I have at 44%, with physical health coming in third place at 37%. Mental health comes in fourth place at 32%. Quality of relationships in fifth place at 24%, followed by life experience, accomplishments, amount of free time, and material possessions. This makes sense to me, but there's another interesting finding in the study. Among all the factors that play an important role, when you ask people how they feel about it, it turns out that the amount of money I have and material possessions are the two factors where people feel the least wealthy at a personal level. With only 49% of participants feeling wealthy in the category of amount of money I have, and 63% feeling wealthy in the category of material possessions. At the other end of the scale, quality of my relationships, happiness, and amount of free time all score above 80%, as you can see here. What's your take on this? And do these results more or less reflect your personal and financial journey? Again, curious minds want to know, so drop a comment below and let us know your perspective. So, while it's good to know these Schwab Modern Wealth Survey numbers, given that we're a financially savvy community here at Diamond NestEgg, and the fact that this study is often widely reported in the media, do keep in mind that a sample size of 2,200 may not necessarily be representative of the mindset and perspective of all adults in this country. And if you're wondering where the starting point is for the people who participated in the survey, the mean amount, the average amount of investable assets per respondent was $288,000, while the median, the amount where half the respondents have more and the other half has less, was $75,000. And the median household income of respondents is $68,000, which compares to a median household income of about $78,500 for the U.S. overall, as reported by the U.S. Census. All right, members, super savers, and Pawn Course fans, I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something new. And now that you know that the average American believes that being comfortable starts with $839,000 and that it takes $2.3 million to be considered wealthy, based on Schwab's 2025 Modern Wealth Survey, I'm sure some of you might be wondering, how many Americans might be in reach of those numbers? So, for those of you who subscribe to Your Financial Journey, check out this latest video here from Caitlin on how many Americans actually have $1 million or more. And as always, if you want to learn more about bond investing and building out a bond portfolio while rates are still attractive, then check out this video here on our bond courses, because rates haven't been at these levels on average in decades. I've also linked all the details on Caitlin's video, our bond courses, and our YouTube Super Saver membership below this video for your convenience. See you again very soon with more brand new wealth building content for your financial journey.